The refusal. The twin suns of Raiden Prime burned low across the horizon, spreading long orange shadows through the marketplace. The air shimmered with the smell of spice and steam, engines and alien chatter mixing in the noise of trade. Among the tall stalls made of glass and metal, a small human woman moved slowly, her back bent, her hair silver, her hands shaking as she clutched a small fabric bag. Her name was Mara, once a teacher on Earth before war and loss scattered her people across the stars. Now she lived on scraps, selling handmade trinkets, hoping to buy a little bread each evening before returning to her small corner near the loading docks. She stopped at a bright store full of fresh food glowing under energy lights. Behind the counter stood an alien with long blue scales and golden eyes that glowed like fire. His name was Trav, a merchant of the Cellari species, known for their arrogance and greed. Mara looked up at him with a trembling smile, her voice soft. "Please, sir, may I have one loaf of bread, just the small one?" Trav's eyes scanned her torn clothes and tired face, and his lips twisted in disgust. "Humans again," he hissed, his tone cold. "Always begging, never earning, get out of my shop." Mara's hands shook harder. She pulled out a few dull credit coins from her pocket. "I can pay, see, not much, but enough for a small piece." The alien flicked his tail sharply, knocking the coins from her palm. They scattered across the clean metal floor. "Your kind spreads pity like disease," he said. "We don't serve humans here." The words cut through the noise of the market. The crowd around the stall turned silent, eyes watching, whispers rising. A young human man standing nearby paused mid-step. He was carrying a box of tools, his work uniform stained with oil. His name was Eli, one of the few human mechanics allowed to work in the district. He saw the old woman kneeling to pick up her coins, her back bending painfully, while the alien laughed. Something inside Eli twisted, a mix of shame and anger burning in his chest. He wanted to speak, but his boss, an alien supervisor, stood not far away, watching too. If Eli interfered, he could lose his job, maybe even be banned from the city. Mara gathered her scattered coins and tried once more, her voice weaker. "Please, sir, I only want bread. I have done nothing wrong." The alien leaned over the counter, his claws tapping the surface. "Your presence itself is wrong," he said slowly, so all could hear. The crowd laughed, some taking out their holopads to record. Mara looked down, clutching her bag to her chest, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. She turned to walk away, her steps slow and unsteady, her dignity held together by nothing but silence. Eli couldn't take it anymore. He placed his box aside and rushed forward. "Wait," he said, his voice louder than he expected. Mara stopped, startled, turning her tired eyes to him. He reached into his lunch pouch and pulled out a small metal container. Inside was half of his meal, a piece of bread and some fried roots he had saved for later. He held it out to her. "Here, please take it." Mara shook her head. "No, young man, you need it more than I do." But Eli smiled softly. "I can work again tomorrow. Maybe you can't." The alien shopkeeper sneered. "Look at this," he said to the crowd. "Humans feeding humans. Maybe they should open a charity zoo." Eli ignored him, gently placing the food into Mara's hands. "Don't worry about them," he said quietly. "Eat." Her hands trembled as she opened the box, the smell of warm bread filling the air. The crowd watched in silence as she took a slow bite, closing her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Eli stood beside her, unbothered by the stares, the laughter fading as guilt crept into some faces. The alien spat on the floor near Eli's boots. "You think your kindness changes anything, boy?" Eli looked up at him calmly. "Maybe not the galaxy," he said, "but maybe her day." The alien scoffed, but for the first time, the crowd didn't laugh with him. Something heavy shifted in the air, as if the suns themselves were watching. Mara finished the last bite, whispering softly, "Thank you, son." Eli nodded, feeling both peace and anger mix in his heart. He turned to help her walk to a nearby bench, while behind them the alien muttered curses under his breath. The marketplace slowly returned to noise, but whispers followed wherever Eli walked. Some called him foolish, others brave. He didn't care, he only knew he had done what was right. The suns had dipped lower now, painting the sky with violet and gold. Eli sat beside Mara as she rested. He didn't know her story, only that kindness had become rare in this galaxy. He didn't know that this single act, this small piece of bread, was about to shake worlds and change the fate of empires. High above them, far beyond the clouds, a faint tremor passed through the upper atmosphere. Invisible to the crowd below, a massive silhouette moved among the stars, approaching the planet. No one noticed the flicker of silver light in the distance. No one but Mara, whose eyes glowed faintly for the briefest moment before she closed them again. She smiled, whispering words too soft for Eli to hear. It begins again. The hum of engines echoed far away, the winds shifting slightly across the market street. Eli looked up for a second, feeling something strange in his chest, a pressure, a sense that the sky itself was holding its breath. He didn't know that this simple day, this simple meal, had just marked the beginning of something far greater than either of them could imagine. The shared meal. The wind swept gently through the marketplace as the two humans sat together on a cold bench at the edge of the square. The twin suns were slowly sinking, painting the sky in deep orange and gold. Eli watched as Mara ate slowly, each bite careful, almost sacred. Her wrinkled fingers trembled around the bread, her eyes filled with both shame and gratitude. He said nothing, just waited, letting her finish in peace. Around them, aliens passed by pretending not to look, yet everyone was watching. Some whispered, others frowned, and a few took pictures, their glowing holoscreens capturing the strange sight. A poor human woman eating beside a mechanic boy. It was not something the city of Ryden Prime saw every day. To them, humans were a forgotten species, scattered and small, their glory buried in old wars and lost alliances. But to Eli, she was not just an old woman. She was a reminder of what being human still meant. When Mara finally finished, she looked at him and smiled, her voice thin but gentle. "You gave me your food, child. Why?" Eli shrugged, looking away. "Because you were hungry." She chuckled weakly. "So are many in this world, yet few share." He nodded. Maybe they forgot how. The silence between them felt warm, like a small shelter against the cold stares of the crowd. A group of alien youths passed by, laughing loudly. One of them tossed an empty drink capsule toward Eli's feet. He ignored it, but Mara frowned. "You shouldn't let them treat you this way," she said. Eli smiled softly. "They can't take my peace. They can only lose theirs." Mara studied him for a long moment, then said, "You speak like someone much older." "Maybe life made me grow fast," he answered, still smiling. A small alien child tugged his mother's arm nearby, asking softly, "Mama, why is the human sharing?" The mother hushed her, pulling her away quickly, as if kindness itself were dangerous. But Eli heard the question, and it made him smile wider. Somewhere inside, he hoped the little one would remember the answer even if her mother didn't. The air began to change as the suns dipped lower. The lights across the market flickered on, glowing with blue-white energy. A faint hum rolled through the ground, so soft at first that no one noticed. Eli thought it was just a passing cargo ship, the kind that landed often in the upper docks. But Mara's eyes lifted to the sky, her pupils narrowing like she saw something far beyond what others could see. Her voice grew quiet. "Do you hear that?" Eli listened, confused. "Hear what?" "The sound of destiny," she whispered. He laughed nervously. "Sounds like an old engine to me." She smiled faintly. "Engines move worlds, child, but destiny moves hearts." A cold breeze passed through the market, knocking over a few stalls. Vendors shouted as metal plates rattled and banners tore from their poles. The ground vibrated stronger now, the hum turning into a deep echo from above. Aliens began to look up, their faces pale under the strange light that now filled the sky. Eli rose to his feet, shielding his eyes as a massive shape broke through the clouds. "What in the stars is that?" someone shouted. "It's descending. Too close," another yelled. The marketplace turned into chaos as people ran for cover. Mara didn't move, her eyes locked on the sky, her hands calm, her breath steady. The shadow grew larger, and the crowd gasped when they saw what it was, a luxury starship, silver and majestic, shaped like a soaring bird of light. Its engines glowed with a deep golden hue, the mark of royalty. Eli could feel the air pressure drop as the craft hovered above the plaza. Dust and light whirled together as it slowly descended, its ramp extending from beneath its gleaming hull. Guards in golden armor stepped out, forming a circle with perfect precision, their weapons glowing softly but ready. The crowd fell silent, all whispers gone, replaced by awe and fear. No one dared to speak. The emblem on the ship's side was unmistakable. It was the royal crest of the Valran Empire, rulers of half the known galaxy. Eli stood frozen, not knowing whether to run or bow. His heart pounded as the guards scanned the crowd with glowing visors. Mara stood up slowly, leaning on her cane, her old frame trembling not from fear, but something else, something deeper. Eli stepped closer. "Ma'am, please, we should move away. This isn't safe." But she didn't move, her eyes reflecting the gold of the ship. Her voice came out steady. "No, Eli, this is where it begins." The ramp touched the ground with a soft metallic hiss. From the blinding light inside the ship, a tall alien woman emerged. Her skin shimmered silver, her eyes glowing with power, her robe flowing like liquid metal. The crowd gasped. She was no ordinary visitor. She was Lady Selrin, the personal envoy of the Empress herself. She looked around, scanning every face, until her gaze landed directly on the old human woman standing in the open. The guards stepped aside instantly as the noble woman descended the ramp, her every movement graceful and commanding. Eli swallowed hard, feeling small under her presence. The entire market went silent as Lady Selrin stopped in front of Mara. Her voice was calm but filled with emotion. "It has been a long time, my queen." Gasps filled the air, the alien shopkeeper dropped to his knees, and Eli's mind went blank. The old woman beside him, the same one refused food an hour ago, was now being called queen. The crowd stood frozen, the sun setting behind the great ship, and in that golden light, the truth of the galaxy began to tremble. Eli looked at Mara, whispering, Who are you?" She smiled softly. "Just someone who wanted bread." The sky trembles. The marketplace stood in total silence, the sound of the starship's engines echoing like thunder trapped inside glass. Dust hung in the air, glowing under the golden light spilling from the ship's ramp. Every creature, every vendor, every machine stopped moving, as if time itself was holding its breath. Eli stood frozen beside the old woman, his mind unable to understand what he had just heard. A moment ago, she was a hungry stranger. Now the galaxy's most powerful envoy was calling her my queen. The alien guards lowered their weapons and bowed deeply, their armor gleaming in the twin sunlight. Lady Selrin, tall and elegant, took slow steps toward Mara. Her eyes, silver and bright, were filled with respect, even fear. The crowd whispered but dared not raise their heads. The alien shopkeeper, Trav, who had mocked the old woman, trembled where he stood, his tail pressed flat against the floor. Mara smiled faintly, her wrinkled face calm in the middle of chaos. She lifted her trembling hand, and to everyone's shock, Lady Selrin knelt before her. The crowd gasped. No one had ever seen a Valran noble bow to a human. Even Eli took a step back, his heart pounding, his breath unsteady. He whispered, "This can't be real." But deep inside, he knew it was. Mara's soft voice broke the silence. "You have not changed, Selrin," still dramatic as ever. The alien noblewoman looked up, her eyes moist. "We thought you were gone, my queen. The council mourned you for years." Mara chuckled softly. "I only disappeared to see what the galaxy had become." Her gaze swept across the marketplace, the rich stalls, the cruel faces, the silence of those who had watched a human be humiliated. "What I found," she said, "was disappointment." Eli listened, stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. He looked at Mara, the same woman who had accepted his small meal, and felt a strange mix of awe and confusion. "Queen," he whispered again, as if the word itself was too heavy for his tongue. Mara turned toward him with gentle eyes. "Don't look so surprised, Eli," she said. "A crown means nothing without kindness." Her voice carried across the crowd, quiet yet powerful, every word cutting through the air like truth itself. Lady Selrin rose and gestured to her guards. "Prepare the ship," she said. "The queen has returned." The soldiers nodded, activating their devices, their golden visors flickering with data streams. A low hum began to grow around the plaza, spreading through the air like a heartbeat. The ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly, and holographic banners of the Valorant crest appeared across nearby towers. Every communication channel on the planet broadcast one message: the human queen has returned. The crowd erupted, half in disbelief, half in fear. Aliens dropped to their knees, unsure of what to do. Some humans nearby cried openly, bowing before Mara, unable to speak. The alien merchants closed their stalls, whispering to each other, wondering if their world had just changed forever. And standing in the center of it all was Eli, a simple mechanic who had only shared his lunch. The noblewoman turned to him and said, "You fed our queen when others mocked her." Eli blinked, speechless. I just shared what I had." Mara smiled. "And that is why I chose this world to visit, to remind the galaxy what humanity still holds." Lady Selrin placed her hand over her chest and said, "The Empress herself will wish to meet this human." The words made Eli's stomach twist. He wasn't ready for such honor or danger. Overhead, the sky darkened suddenly. The ship's sensors flickered red, warning symbols appearing on every screen. The guards tensed, raising their weapons. Lady Selrin turned sharply, her voice commanding, "Report." A guard replied, "Incoming fleet detected. 200 vessels, unidentified, approaching from orbit." Gasps spread like wildfire through the plaza. The crowd looked up as streaks of light crossed the clouds. Warships, massive and fast, their hulls glowing with crimson energy. They weren't Valorant ships. They bore no royal crest. Eli's heart raced. "What's happening?" he asked. Lady Selrin's face turned pale. "They've come for her." Mara closed her eyes, whispering something in an old human language long forgotten. A gust of wind tore through the square, scattering dust and banners. The alien shopkeeper crawled backward, shouting, "She brought them here. She'll doom us all." Eli moved in front of Mara instinctively, shielding her. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice shaking but firm. Mara smiled sadly. "You're brave, but this is not your fight." He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. I won't let them hurt you." The first of the ships broke the clouds, enormous and dark, covering the suns with their shadow. The air roared like thunder, windows shattered, alarms screamed across the city. But through it all, Mara stood perfectly still, her hand resting on Eli's shoulder. Her voice calm. "Every storm begins with kindness. Every war ends with it too." As the fleet descended, the golden light of the Valorant ship reflected in her eyes. And the galaxy held its breath once again. The revelation. The ground shook beneath their feet as the first warship broke through the clouds. Its enormous shadow covered half the market, and the sky turned from gold to dark steel. Sirens screamed through the capital, drones flew overhead, scanning for targets. The people of Raiden Prime ran for cover, their voices lost under the thunder of engines. And yet, in the center of the chaos, Mara stood calm, her silver hair blowing gently in the storm wind. Eli stood beside her, eyes wide, heart pounding. "Who are they?" he shouted, but his voice was drowned by the noise. Lady Selrin raised her wrist device, her voice commanding, "Shields up. All units defend the queen." Golden barriers of light surrounded the plaza, glowing like suns trapped in glass. The alien guards spread out, weapons humming with energy, ready for battle. Above them, the warships formed a ring around the city, 200 vessels strong, each armed for destruction. Their red lights blinked in a silent rhythm, like the heartbeat of a coming war. Eli stared up in disbelief. "Are they here to destroy us?" Mara smiled faintly, her calmness both strange and powerful. "No, they are here to remember." Lady Selrin turned to her in shock. "Remember, my queen." Mara nodded slowly. "They were once my fleet." The words froze everyone. Even the wind seemed to stop. Eli blinked. "Your fleet," he whispered. Mara's eyes glowed faintly gold as she spoke, her voice steady and warm. "Long ago, before the Valorant Empire, before the Great Divide, humans were not weak wanderers." She looked up at the ships with something between pride and sorrow. "We ruled the skies with compassion, not fear." Lady Selrin stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You mean the legends were true?" Mara nodded. "Yes, the old alliance between humans and Valorant was born from kindness, from peace, but greed broke it." She turned to Eli. And now, a single act of kindness has awakened what power once slept. The warships above began to shift formation, their red lights fading to white. One by one, they tilted their bows toward the ground, as if kneeling in respect. The sight stole every breath in the plaza. The massive fleet that had moments ago looked ready for war now glowed in quiet surrender. Lady Selrin dropped to her knees again, tears welling in her eyes. My queen, the prophecy. It said a humble act would reignite the covenant of stars. Mara smiled softly. Prophecies only guide those willing to listen. Her gaze found Eli, and he listened. Eli felt small, his hands trembling. I just shared my food. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. And yet, you reminded a galaxy what humanity truly is. Her voice echoed like music through the plaza, carried by the wind and energy waves of the fleet above. The barriers around them shimmered, merging with the light from the ships. It felt like the entire sky was bowing before something greater than power, before kindness itself. The alien shopkeeper, Trav, crawled forward, his voice shaking. Forgive me, I didn't know who you were. Mara looked down at him, her eyes neither cruel nor soft. It is not me you offended, she said. It is the kindness you forgot. He lowered his head, unable to speak. Lady Selrin turned to her queen. What shall be done with him? Mara's voice carried calm authority. Let him serve those he once turned away. That will be punishment enough. The guards stepped back, lowering their weapons. The energy barriers faded, revealing the clear sky now filled with gentle white lights from the kneeling warships. News drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting the event live across thousands of systems. Billions would soon see what happened. A poor human mechanic sharing food had awakened a queen and an empire. Eli still stood silent, unable to understand the scale of what he had caused. Mara turned to him and said softly, Eli, from this day, you are not just a worker of Raiden Prime, you are a witness of the covenant. He stared at her, lost for words. I don't deserve that. She smiled. That is why you do. The sky flashed once more as the flagship descended lower, its engines singing a deep metallic hymn. Mara walked forward toward the ship's ramp, her figure small yet radiant under the golden light. Before stepping on board, she turned back one last time. Her voice reached across the silent crowd. Never forget, greatness begins not with strength, but with mercy. Then she looked at Eli. And mercy begins with you. The wind caught her cloak as she ascended the ramp, the ship glowing brighter. Eli stood still, his heart heavy yet filled with something new, a sense that this moment would be remembered forever. Above them, the fleet began to rise slowly, their lights blinking in perfect harmony. A voice echoed across every communication device on the planet. The Queen of Humanity has returned. And as the sky thundered with light, the people below whispered a name that had long been buried by time, Mara of Earth. The queen who vanished into history had returned because one young human refused to ignore hunger. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The hidden truth. The fleet hovered silently above Raiden Prime, their white lights steady like distant stars frozen in place. The city below was quiet now, the noise of fear replaced by a strange calm. Every being, human or alien, could feel that history itself had just changed. Eli stood at the edge of the plaza, the wind brushing his face, still trying to understand what had just happened. He watched the great ship as Mara, the woman he had once thought a beggar, disappeared into its golden light. Lady Selrin approached him, her steps light, but her presence powerful. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. You do not know what you've done, do you? Eli shook his head. I only gave her my food. Selrin smiled faintly. And she gave you back the galaxy. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She gestured for him to follow, and he hesitated. I'm not one of you, he said. I don't belong on that ship. But she replied softly. She asked for you, Eli, and when a queen calls, even stars listen. The ramp opened again, glowing bright, and Eli stepped inside the royal vessel for the first time. The interior shimmered with light made of energy, walls smooth like flowing glass, symbols shifting across them like living memories. He walked in silence, following Selrin through long corridors lined with ancient banners, each one showing humans standing beside Valran warriors, united in peace. At the end of the hall stood Mara, no longer bent or frail, her posture straight, her presence radiant. She turned to him with a smile, her eyes glowing softly. "You came," she said. Eli bowed awkwardly. I didn't know where else to go." She chuckled. "That's how destiny works, child. It doesn't wait for understanding, it simply finds you." He looked around, noticing the glowing crest on the wall behind her. It showed a symbol of a human hand and an alien wing intertwined. Mara's gaze followed his. "That was once the sign of unity," she said, "the covenant of stars." Eli frowned. "I've heard that name in stories, but everyone said it was a myth." Mara stepped closer. "Myths are only truths too powerful for the unready," she whispered. She placed her palm against a glass panel, and the room filled with light. Holograms appeared, images of Earth, old and beautiful, before the Great War, before humanity vanished into exile. Armies of humans and Valorans standing together, smiling, building cities that floated among the stars. Then came the images of fire, betrayal, greed, planets burning, peace collapsing. Eli watched in silence, feeling his heart tighten as he saw what had been lost. Mara's voice was calm but filled with sorrow. When power grew faster than compassion, the stars dimmed. She turned to him, her face kind but firm. "I left because they forgot the meaning of mercy." He nodded slowly. "And now you've come back." She smiled faintly, not to rule, but to remind. Her hand rested on his shoulder. "And you, Eli, are proof that the light of humanity still burns." He swallowed hard. "I'm just a mechanic." "You're more than that," she said. "You are a mirror." He frowned, confused. "A mirror?" "Yes," she said softly. "You reflected what humanity used to be. Kind, brave, unafraid to care when it costs something." Her words made him look away, embarrassed, but she smiled knowingly. "Do you know why the fleet returned?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because they recognized me," she said. "The codes woven into my DNA called them home." Eli's eyes widened. "So they were always waiting for you?" She nodded, waiting for a reason to believe again. The ship hummed softly around them, like it was alive and listening. Selrin stepped forward. "My queen, the council requests direction. Should we return to the capital?" Mara shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "First, the galaxy must see what kindness can awaken." She looked at Eli. "You will be my envoy to the worlds of men and stars." He froze. "Me, why me?" "Because," she said, "they will not fear your voice, they will trust your heart." Eli looked down, unsure. "I don't have power." Mara smiled. "Power is not in weapons. It's in the choice to be good when others choose not to be." Her words echoed softly in the glowing chamber. Outside, through the ship's glass hull, the great fleet hovered like guardians reborn, their lights forming a constellation shaped like an open hand. Mara turned toward the window. "Once, humanity was exiled from the stars," she said. "Tonight, they are invited back." Eli stood beside her, staring at the endless horizon of space. His reflection glimmered beside hers, a young mechanic and an ancient queen, two souls bound by one simple act of kindness. For the first time, he understood what she meant when she said, "It begins again." It wasn't just about her return. It was about hope, reborn through the smallest gesture. He whispered, "Will they accept us again?" Mara's voice was soft, but full of certainty. "They already have." The ship began to rise, engines humming like a choir of stars. And across the galaxy, billions watched as the return of the human queen was announced on every screen. In that moment, humanity was no longer forgotten. They were remembered, respected, and reborn, because one man refused to walk away from hunger, and one woman chose to reveal the truth the universe had buried. The punishment. The great ship hovered above the city like a sun made of silver. Its light poured across the market streets, washing away the shadows that had once ruled there. The crowd still stood frozen, whispering in awe of the truth they had witnessed. The Queen of Humanity had returned, and the stars themselves bowed to her name. But for some, that truth carried the weight of shame. Trav, the alien shopkeeper who had refused Mara food, knelt on the cold ground. His hands shook as he looked up at the glowing ship, his scales dull with fear. The laughter he once carried had vanished. replaced by silence and regret. Guards in golden armor surrounded him, their weapons low but their presence heavy. Lady Selrin walked forward, her voice clear and sharp. "Trav of the Cellari Trade Guild, you mocked the queen of humanity." Gasps spread through the marketplace. Trav pressed his forehead to the ground. "I did not know. I swear, I did not know who she was." Selrin's tone remained calm. "You did not need to know who she was to show kindness." Her words struck harder than any weapon. She turned to Mara, who stood at the top of the ship's ramp, bathed in golden light. "Your Majesty, what shall be his fate?" she asked. Mara's eyes softened as she looked down at the trembling merchant. The crowd waited, expecting fury, perhaps destruction. But the queen's voice was quiet, steady. "No empire grows from hate," she said. She descended the ramp slowly, her every step echoing like a heartbeat through the plaza. When she stood before Trav, she spoke gently. "Do you remember the bread you refused me?" He nodded weakly, tears burning in his eyes. "From this day," she said, "you will feed those who hunger. You will serve food to the poor, the outcast, and the forgotten, every day, until you learn what true wealth is." The crowd murmured in astonishment. No execution, no exile, only compassion that cut deeper than punishment. Trav raised his head slowly, tears falling onto the dusty ground. "I will, my queen. I swear I will." Mara placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice warm. "Then rise, and let your service heal what your pride once wounded." For the first time in his life, the merchant bowed from gratitude, not fear. Eli watched from a distance, feeling a strange ache in his chest. He had seen punishment before, but never one that brought peace instead of pain. Lady Selrin turned to him. "Do you see why she was our queen?" Eli nodded quietly. "She punishes with mercy." Selrin smiled faintly. "And that is why galaxies followed her once, and will again." As the crowd dispersed, humans and aliens alike began leaving food on the ground. Small offerings, gifts of apology and unity. It started with one alien child placing her fruit beside the bench where Mara had first sat. Then another followed, then hundreds more. By sunset, the marketplace was covered in food, light, and quiet tears. Eli looked around, stunned. "They're offering what they once denied." Mara smiled. "The universe always remembers kindness. It only needs a reminder." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of bread through the streets. It was the same smell that had begun this story, but now it meant something more. It meant change, it meant hope. Lady Selrin raised her wrist communicator. "Transmit the decree," she ordered. Her voice carried across every colony, every station, every ship in orbit. "By command of Queen Mara of Earth, the Covenant of Stars is restored." Every screen in the galaxy lit up with her image, an old human woman who had once been denied a meal. Her message was simple. Let mercy rule where pride once lived. Let the strong protect the small. Let the powerful remember the hungry. Billions watched, some with awe, some with tears. On distant worlds, humans long thought extinct stood tall again. In alien capitals, rulers paused and lowered their heads, knowing the balance of power had shifted forever. As night fell on Ryden Prime, Eli sat on the same bench where it all began. The markets were quiet now, the stars glowing brighter than ever. Mara joined him, her steps slow but filled with strength. She looked at him and smiled. "You see, Eli, sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with bread." He laughed softly. "And sometimes with hunger." She nodded. "Yes, and both feed the soul." For a moment, they sat in silence, watching the lights of the fleet drift slowly across the sky. Eli turned to her. "What happens now?" She looked ahead, her eyes glowing faintly. "Now, humanity remembers who it is." Her words carried the weight of 1,000 years. And somewhere deep within the stars, the universe itself seemed to exhale. The legacy. The next morning, the suns rose over Ryden Prime brighter than they ever had before. Their twin rays painted the market in gold, the same place that once echoed with cruelty, now alive with kindness. The stalls that had refused humans now offered free meals, their signs written in both alien and human tongues. Children from every species laughed together, running through the same streets that had once divided them. And high above, the silver fleet shimmered like a halo guarding a reborn world. Eli walked through the plaza quietly, his old uniform still stained with grease. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, not with mockery, but with gratitude. He didn't know how to act. He wasn't a hero in his own mind. He had only done what felt right. But sometimes the smallest right thing changes everything. He stopped by the same bench where it had all begun. Someone had placed fresh flowers there, wrapped in cloth bearing the symbol of the covenant of stars. The scent of bread still hung in the air, sweet and warm. Mara approached from behind, her cloak brushing lightly against the ground, her crown simple yet radiant. "Still sitting in the same place," she said with a smile. Eli looked up, grinning. "Guess I like familiar things." She sat beside him, her eyes on the sky. "The universe doesn't forget moments like yours, Eli." He shook his head. "I didn't mean to start a revolution." She chuckled softly. "That's exactly why you did." He turned toward her. "So what now, Your Majesty?" Her gaze stayed on the horizon. "Now, the galaxy heals." In the following days, stories spread across the stars faster than any fleet could travel. Every colony, every port, every ship repeated the tale of the human who shared his food. In schools, teachers told children about the boy named Eli, who fed hope to a queen. In the great halls of the Valran, leaders quoted his words, "Maybe not the galaxy, but maybe her day." And soon, it became more than a story. It became a law of kindness written into hearts. On distant worlds, strangers began leaving food in public squares for anyone who hungered. Ships carried banners that read, "Feed one, heal many." And the covenant of stars, once a myth, was now a living promise. Aliens and humans traded not for profit, but for peace. Old enemies shared meals under new skies, their wars replaced by shared bread. One evening, as the fleet prepared to depart, Lady Selrin approached Eli with a silver insignia in her hand. She smiled. "By royal decree, you are now keeper of the covenant." Eli blinked in disbelief. "I'm no leader." Selrin replied gently. "That's what makes you the best kind." She placed the insignia on his chest, a glowing emblem of unity and humility. When the moment came for Mara to leave, the plaza filled again. Every species stood side by side, thousands watching as the queen stepped onto the ramp. The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of bread once more. She turned back, her eyes meeting Eli's. "Remember," she said, "kindness is a crown anyone can wear." He nodded. "And hunger is a throne waiting for mercy." She smiled proudly. "Then rule well, my friend." The ship rose into the sky, engines humming like a farewell song. Its reflection danced across Eli's eyes as he watched it vanish into the stars. The crowd remained silent until the very last light disappeared. Then they cheered, not for power, not for royalty, but for humanity itself. Years passed, and the story of that day became legend. Statues were never built, for Eli refused them. Instead, every world kept a simple table in their city center, a table with one loaf of bread and two empty seats. One for the hungry and one for the kind. Whenever someone sat and shared, they whispered, "This is how stars remember." And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the Queen of Humanity smiled from her throne of light. For she knew her people had finally returned, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. Her voice echoed across eternity. One act of kindness can awaken 1,000 worlds. And the universe, vast and silent, whispered back, "We remember."